Hello. In just a moment, if these two stop chit-chatting, we'll have the press preview and look at what's in the morning papers for you. You can have a proper chinwag in a minute, though.
We're imparting useful information to one another.
Yeah, they're exhausted, actually. You've been up since 4 o'clock this morning,
I
haven't you?
have, yeah.
That is a tough call. It's a very tough call. So you're doing very well.
So now you're feeling guilty.
Yeah. I am feeling a little bit guilty, yeah. I feel tired and I got up at 11. Anyway, let's run you through the main news, should we? The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn admitted his party needs to do more to reconnect with voters following the defeat in the Copeland by-election. So Mo Farah has once again denied any wrongdoing after a leaked United States anti-doping agency report suggested his coach almost certainly broke anti-doping rules. And the stars of the big screen preparing for the biggest night of the year for the film industry. It's the Oscars, of course, but many expect the ceremony to be dominated by swipes at President Trump. So this is the press preview on Sky News, and joining me tonight, talk radio presenter Julia Hartley-Brewer and the Fleet Street Fox herself, Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. Good to see you both.
Thank
Really
I've
good
had
to see you
plenty of
both.
sleep, I'm fine.
Oh, that's good.
I'm so glad everyone else has had so much sleep.
I've got a 10-year-old, we sleep.
Well, that's all right then. All right for some. Let's have a look at the front pages before we have a chat through some of the details for you. The Eye has comments from Jeremy Corbyn, who's insisted he will lead the Labour Party until at least 2020. The Telegraph says Theresa May is expected to announce an end to the free movement of new EU migrants once Article 50 is triggered. The Times says the PM is preparing for the Scottish Government to call a second independence referendum once the Brexit negotiations start. The NHS has lost more than 500,000 documents in 5 years. That's the lead in The Guardian for you. The Mail has an investigation claiming BBC licence fee agents have been ordered to catch 28 evaders each a week. US banks are increasingly hiring staff in low-cost Asian economies at odds with President Trump's pledge to bring jobs back to America. That's the lead for the Financial Times in the morning. The Mirror has a report which suggests school funding cuts will lead to fewer teachers and bigger class sizes. The Express says millions of people will have to work into their 80s because of a lack of retirement savings. And the Star says Ant and Dec's show last night hit a ratings high of 12 years. So let's talk schools, should we? On the front of the Mirror this morning, so bigger class sizes, fewer teachers. That can't be good if it's true.
No, of course not. And this is the kind of thing that, I was at school in the 80s and 90s, and I kind of remember there being similar things said then. This is because there's twofold problem with the education system. Firstly, there is a new funding formula which is effectively going to be making cuts, and secondly, schools have been operating at a level which means that their finances so far has not been keeping up with inflation, so they're having to pay more and more costs out and they don't have the cash to pay for it. So overall, the Institute for Fiscal Studies says there's going to be a 6.5% cut average across the schools, which is going to be bigger class sizes, fewer teachers, fewer books, fewer textbooks, and more kinds of problems. And the Mirror's got inside here on pages 4 and 5 some of the things that's going to involve is going to be textbooks not being replaced as quickly, education chiefs may be stuck with outdated computers, spending on new resources is frozen, schools are already scrapping music lessons, turning off the heating and planning to charge parents for pupil sessions with mental health counsellors. So this is, this is school nurses, this is the NIT checks, this is the safety and security, this is cameras and CCTV in some instances. They're going to be cutting back everything they can in order to try to keep teachers and keep things going on, and they're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. This is something that's going to
think about this is the Institute of Fiscal Studies report. So, but the interesting thing, of course, is that education spending was ring-fenced. It was one of the things that when we had the cuts of the coalition government and the current government now, we have seen the ring-fencing of education, and actually they were very much protected along with the NHS. But the trouble is the same issues with the NHS, where people are getting older and more treatments cost much more money. You've got exactly the same thing in schools. We've had a massive population move. There are more children going into primary schools and into secondary schools. By the way, you'd have thought that the authorities would have worked this out, because it's a really cunning thing. When people are born, in 5 years' time they go to school, and 11 years' time they go to secondary school. This apparently completely defeated the last government to be able to cope with this. But also at the same time, the cost of education, a lot of them have gone up. Kids having iPads, all this, lots and lots of the technology they have to learn now. And yes, look, of course, kids still need notebooks and paper, but a lot of education costs a lot more. But the interesting thing again, on the flip side of this, is under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, we saw a massive, massive amount of money going into education. Billions upon billions upon billions of pounds extra money going into refurbishing schools, extra money per pupil. I mean, it was a huge amount of money. And do you know what happened? Education didn't get any better, and we actually saw standards fall. So it's not all about money. There's something else. There are definitely cuts, no question at all. I don't think the cuts are a good idea. However, children doing well at school doesn't appear to have much to do with how much money goes into their schools.
We put loads of money into school and it made no difference, therefore we shouldn't put
No, not made no difference. Standards went down in that period.
It also shows
on international league tables we plummeted in that period.
It's got a lot worse, particularly for poorer children. If you start off in poorer areas and if you are a poor child when you go to school, your educational chances are actually less than your slightly wealthier colleagues in the classroom. Same classes, you know, it makes a big difference, and that's not what an education system should be doing.
I just want to bring some breaking news, actually. We're getting from the Press Association about Sir Gerald Kaufman, Labour MP, of course, I mean, very well known Sir Gerald Kaufman, has died at the age of 86, father of the House, MP for Manchester Gordon. A very well-known figure, I mean, a controversial figure at times.
Controversial, certainly, but yeah, very well-known and very well respected, and an MP who he's been a very powerful figure. I can remember when I was a political reporter in the first few years in the House of Commons, the first few years of the Labour government. I remember him being Select Committee Chair, Culture Select Committee Chair, and he always commanded the room. It was actually,
yes, he did.
It was actually very difficult for reporters because he always spoke very quietly, so that everybody had to lean in and listen to him. But when he stands up in the House of Commons, people paid attention. I mean, he's a really very important Labour figure.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what tributes actually appear. I mean, you'd expect them from across the House.
Absolutely, yeah. I say, as the father of the House, the longest-serving MP.
86.
Yes.
I hadn't realised.
I would not have thought he was as old as that.
No. So when we think about it, I mean, I'm getting on a little bit, as Susie pointed out last hour. He's always been around in my consciousness.
But we are definitely seeing, and maybe it's something of each generation we see, but I'm noticing the people who are dying sadly now, who've been the big beasts throughout our adult, our recollections of politics. People who've been around for years, and we've lost so many in recent years.
And you won't, but I mean, I suppose it's said every generation, but you wonder whether there's the same impact with politicians at the moment, whether the same big beast heavy hitters are actually
whether they've got a bit identikit, and they don't get through.
Well, it's a vocational thing, I think. Politics, so when I was growing up, you had the big beast, people who really believed in things they were doing, and they came often from the parts of life that they sought to represent in the House of Commons. And I think more and more the politicians we get now, they're graduates, they believe in ideology for a theoretical reason. It's something that chimes with them necessarily, but they don't necessarily have come from that same place themselves. And they seem, like you were saying earlier on, some of them you can see in different parties, at different times under different leaders, and not necessarily definitely politically, ideologically as certain as some of the others have been.
Which sort of brings us on in a way to the front of the eye, because it's looking at Jeremy Corbyn and his future. And whatever you think about him, and clearly he's someone who divides opinion a great deal.
One way of describing him. And also someone who absolutely believes what he believes, and he has not changed his mind in 40 years and has no intention of doing so. But again, some people might think this is a good thing, some might question it.
But he is someone who actually, when history is written, will have made a very big impact. I mean, and not just for his time as party leader, but actually for the reputation he gained before that.
Well, no, he was a backbench MP.
That's very optimistic.
He was a useful left-wing. He was saying, do a radio show. Oh, let's get a left-winger on. Oh, Jeremy will be free. Let's talk to Jeremy.
No, but in terms of the beast of Bolsover himself, Dennis Skinner.
Dennis Skinner was different league. No, he got to remember. Jeremy Corbyn was a virtual unknown. Everyone knew Dennis. Everyone knows who Dennis Skinner is. No, the reality is that he is going to be remembered as a man who destroyed a 100-year-old political party that serves an incredible purpose. I mean, look, whatever people's views are of the Labour Party now, when you think back to what the Labour Party did for the ordinary working man and woman in the decades, the creation of the NHS, I mean, all of the things that they have done. There have been lots of problems at the Labour Party over the years, lots of problems, all sides. But in terms of a party being created, which represents ordinary men and women and not representing money, and trade union rights and all of the benefits that people have at work now, that, a lot of those are down to the Labour Party, and you cannot take that away. And he's destroying it by-election by by-election. He should be ashamed of himself.
Julia Hartley-Brewer said all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not me. I'm just making sure everyone knew that. To be honest, what Jeremy Corbyn is going to be remembered by his history is that if you imagine, if you'd been doing your job, Stephen, here at Sky News for 30 years, which perhaps it feels like sometimes,
but
only to the viewers.
If you can imagine what it must have been like to be mocked roundly for all of those 30 years, to be ignored, to be belittled, to be treated as a joke by everybody, not just in this building but outside, people sending you letters telling you you're a joke, and every single story you wanted to do was being mocked and told this was stupid and idiotic and so on. And then suddenly someone suggests that you become head of Sky News, and suddenly there's a few people clapping you. Anybody's ego in that situation would take flight, and that's what's happened to Jeremy. Is he's finally felt some kind of justification for the extreme stances he's taken previously. He now feels that he was right all along, and everyone is suddenly seeing things his way, and that's why he's clinging on to power. That's why he won't go, because he really believes finally in himself. You see what I mean? And the interesting thing here is the way the Eye have drawn their front page. There's a picture of Jeremy Corbyn looking slightly bonkers, pointing to a little cover line there for a piece that's inside saying a buffoon, yes, but also a fascist who will cling to power. I'm sure that column is, of course, about Kim Jong-un that's pictured underneath, but it looks like Jeremy's almost pointing something out to himself.
Someone's been a bit naughty with the
Someone's
front
had
page.
fun with that, yeah.
We're going to leave it there. The idea of me being in charge of anything is very, very slim. A lot of people here will be pleased to know. We're back with more papers in just a moment. So we're looking at tomorrow's newspapers with Talk Radio presenter Julia Hartley-Brewer and the Fleet Street Fox, Susie Boniface. Let's have a look at, what are we doing? The Times. What's this about the Prime Minister's advisor?
This is going to come back to bite them on the backside. George Freeman, who is Theresa May's policy chief, is talking about restricting personal independence payments, so the payments for people who need some help to maintain their independence.
So is that like disability living allowance?
Yeah, to those who fundamentally are the most disabled, which of course means that you're saying that some people are not so disabled. Now, there are lots of disabilities which are spectrum conditions, and some people suffer them worse than others. But in particular there, Mr Freeman is talking about these tweaks about rolling back some bizarre decisions. Benefits are now being given to people who are taking pills at home, who suffer from anxiety. We want to make sure we get the money to the really disabled people who need it. People with anxiety kill themselves with it. People with anxiety are suicidal on a daily basis.
That's not the point he's making, though. The
yes,
point is
the point he's making is that anxiety is not a serious issue.
No, he's not saying that at all. No,
yes, he is. He just said it. Read it.
No, he's not. The point about these particular... I'm not defending the policy, but the simple matter of fact is the point about these personal independence payments is the extra payments that are needed for you to be able to live a normal life. And there are some extra costs which you have if you, for instance, are in a wheelchair, or if you're blind, or if you have other disabilities.
So suicidal they want to kill themselves on a daily basis.
But
doesn't need help.
No, of course they need help, but that's not the same as needing, for instance, this particular payment. Look, I'm always got issues whenever they do. He's not saying it's not as important.
Other than about Brexit,
it doesn't necessarily impose an extra cost of living on you living a normal life, does it?
Not necessarily, but lots of people who have severe...
Not necessarily.
Yeah, he is wrong. He's just flat wrong. Lots of people who have severe anxiety need care.
Of course,
they need help.
And they need but
they don't need to be told that their condition...
Those are different payments.
They do not need to be told.
They will qualify under different payments. I would always be concerned about the fact that whenever there are these reforms, it always ends up spending less money. Clearly, there'll be people who should probably need less, but there will also be people who need more, and they never seem to get more.
What these reforms are about is saying that some people are second-class kind of disabled,
just
and
ridiculous.
that therefore you get less, and you are not as disabled as somebody else.
Well, no,
it's not what he's saying at all.
It could be said, couldn't it, that someone is not as disabled as somebody else?
Well, I'll give you, for example, OK? I have epilepsy, and I have a disabled rail card as a result of that. Now, when I present my disabled rail card, or ask loudly on a train for a disabled adult ticket, please, people sometimes look at me and go, "You don't look very disabled." I have a disability, and that means that a consultant has written to the rail company...
Just out of interest, excuse my ignorance, but why is that? Because you can't drive? Because you do drive?
Yes, because sometimes someone who has epilepsy cannot drive all the time. It's not always safe. But that means, I have consultant
you do
who
drive. You've driven
yes,
here tonight.
I can
So how
drive
do you know
sometimes,
when you can and can't?
sometimes I can't.
Right.
Well, I know about my condition, which incidentally is sparked by anxiety. But the problem is that, you know, someone who looks disabled and someone who doesn't look disabled doesn't mean they're any less disabled. There are people who have
That's
colostomy
not what
bags
this is about at
and who
all.
have to use disabled toilets.
That's not what
who
this
get
is about.
criticised because they are not in a
No,
wheelchair.
you've just
And
made the
this
whole
now-
debate. You can't say anything bad about disabled. I was like, la. That's
No, I haven't,
you've just
Julia.
closed down
Our
the
Prime
entire
Minister,
debate
only
about
a few
what
months
disability
ago,
payments
was
different
talking
people with different
about
disabilities would need.
Our Prime
Can we
Minister,
talk about something
only a few
different?
months ago, was talking about how important mental health is and to take it seriously.
That's got
Her very
nothing to
own
do
policy
with
chief
this.
has just taken it not very seriously.
Nothing to
Well,
do with this.
Your views on that, of course, very welcome at Sky Stephen on Twitter for you. I'm saying no more about it. On to the Oscars, which I will say lots about. Boo?
I know you're going to cover them all night. I despise this whole handing out of awards to people who are already earning silly amounts of money for doing a very silly job.
Yeah, but it's about La La Land. Come on,
No,
what's not to
I've
love?
got well, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I've got nothing anyone has said about it suggests to me it's a film I'm going to want to see. Sorry, I don't get it at all. But no, I genuinely, I just don't understand why we are so obsessed with people who act for a living, and then so obsessed with what women in particular wear while they're talking about
It'd be
acting
nice
for a
to
living.
see a result of a fashion spread after the Oscars as what man wore it best and how they all rocked the same black suit.
Oh, talking black suits, there's Justin Timberlake in a black suit. I bet you like looking at him, Julia.
Not that bothered either way. I know. I've never understood why
It's an
we have these
industry
awards.
award thing, and if you're going to also, show the plumbers national awards for whatever they've been doing
Useful
this year,
people.
that's interesting to plumbers, and I'm sure this is interesting to actors. But mainly it's because they're celebrities and because they're
I'd
interesting.
love to see a plumber in that gold dress.
That's how people do it.
My plumber would look lovely in that dress.
She needs to eat some cake.
You couldn't change.
She has not eaten a meal in 2 weeks.
You couldn't change your U-bend with that on. Not a chance.
I don't know,
Yeah, you
it's
could.
probably quite wiped clean. That looks very practical for doing plumbing in.
No. Well, look, we shall leave the Oscars there, and we shall leave you to it. Go home and watch it. You'll enjoy it. It'll be fantastic. Been good to see you both. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much indeed. Let's get a check on the weather for you.